End of the world. Unmute.
Hello, Jay Dyer.
Yep.
Yeah, I agree with you on that stuff. But as far as the one true church, aren't our bodies the temple where the Holy Spirit resides? I mean, what is the point of a
Well,
physical church? And if the
on an
and if
individual on an individual level, that's true. But Jesus established a historic entity that is called the church. And if you read the councils of the church and the church fathers, you'll see that there's only one historic church after the death of the apostles.
but I mean, I don't really trust Constantine and the Catholic Church. And kind of discredits the orthodoxy that you
So no, it
recognize the
doesn't.
first
No, it
1,000 years
doesn't.
of this
No, it
heretic of
doesn't. You
teaching
have
where they infuse Mithraism
you
with
have no idea
Jesus.
what you're talking about. Stop yapping. No, you don't. If you can read the church fathers before Constantine, like Irenaeus and Cyprian and Ignatius and Clement, and they teach the same thing as the church fathers after Nicaea. So you're just repeating stuff that idiotic Seventh Day Adventists say with no basis in history or church fathers.
Not true at all. I mean, you recognize
Name
that.
one. Name the church fathers before and after Nicaea. They contradict.
Well, I don't trust the early church fathers. I think they're infallible as we are.
Okay, but you made the claim that after Constantine things changed. So where
Well,
did
I
it
would say
change?
from the
What's the
very
proof?
beginning. I mean, churchianity is a lot
Where's the
different than the
proof?
original
Where is
followers
the
of Yeshua
proof?
the Messiah.
Where is the
You
proof? You just
changed the
said from the
Sabbath.
beginning. No, they didn't. The church fathers and the apostles teach that they meet on the first day.
Not the Sabbath that God
The
gave
book
us,
of
which was
Acts.
Saturday.
The book of Acts talks about meeting together on the first day of the week to break bread. That's the Eucharist. And John in the book of Revelation talks about doing the liturgy on the Lord's day. That's Sunday. So the Sunday is the true Sabbath because that's the day of the resurrection, which is the fulfillment of the seventh day Jewish Sabbath, Hebrews
Oh, so
4.
God was wrong at first.
Hebrews 4, it's a fulfillment, not a wrong.
Okay, I just want to say that. Good luck.
What does Hebrews 4 say?
What? I don't have Hebrews 4 in front of me.
So you're not even aware of the most famous New Testament passage on the Sabbath, and you want to debate the
Well, I
Sabbath.
do know what the Old Testament says about the Sabbath and it's Saturday.
Right. So you're a Judaizing heretic who doesn't care what the fulfillment of the Old
Oh,
Testament
no,
says.
Jesus was the fulfillment of the law.
Was he the fulfillment of the Sabbath?
What do you mean the fulfillment of the Sabbath?
So you're not even aware of a central argument of Hebrews on the purpose of the Sabbath, and you want to debate the
Well,
Sabbath.
I just think the original Sabbath is Saturday, and that's the right Sabbath.
Doesn't matter what you think because Hebrews 4 trumps you. You're not an apostle. You're a schismatic Judaizing heretic. Hebrews 4 says that the fulfillment of the Sabbath is Christ resting on the Holy Saturday in the tomb and then being resurrected on the eighth day. So Jesus laying in the tomb, that is the Sabbath. That is the rest. We rest in his rest. Just like Jesus being circumcised in Luke is the fulfillment of circumcision. All those are fulfilled. Yeah, exactly. Radio silence because Hebrews 4, the most famous New Testament passage on the Sabbath, refutes everything that you just said. Proto, unmute. Proto, unmute. Do you want to talk? Unmute. So look, I will go all day long demolishing these dispensationalist, Judaizing heretics. They have no knowledge of the Bible. They have no knowledge of church history. They are literally just complete morons. But they're overzealous morons that have a zeal without knowledge. And they need to be sternly rebuked and corrected because they're the source, in part, of a large portion of America believing this stupid heresy of dispensationalism and Zionism. And this idea that there is no historic church, we're all just supposed to worship an atheistic, socialist, Moses Hess, Theodore Herzl cult, which is just insane. It's just so stupid. It's amazing the level of just total ignorance and just total insanity that these people engage in. And they want to come debate. They don't even know the most famous passage in the New Testament about the Sabbath's theological significance, the entire chapter of Hebrews 4. They don't even know what it says. Well, I know what the Old Testament says. So hit request to speak. I'll bring you up. If you have a disagreement, you're welcome to come make your arguments. Listen, this is open forum debate. It is not a formal debate. I don't owe any of you a formal debate. If you come on here, you are treated as a noob. If you make bad arguments, I will interrupt you and I will bring you back to the point that you tried to get away from. If you move the goalposts, if you commit a fallacy, you will get interrupted. You don't get to filibuster and red herring and talk past your errors and your fallacies. That's the point of doing this. You're not the expert debater. I am an expert debater. I've been doing it for almost 25 years. I've debated all the famous Muslims and atheists publicly. So, no, when you come here, you're not coming here to correct me about how to go about debating and what you're not in the league of a formal debate. This is for open call in debates. You can challenge me. You're welcome to. Nobody else does this, by the way. So you guys whine and bitch. I'm the only person out here who for 7 years has done open call-in debates. All the other prominent debate people, except for maybe Scam Shamu, don't open it up for anybody to call in. I do. But let's get it straight here. You're not here to tell me how to debate, and you're not a known debater. You're not a debater. I am a debater. And I don't care whether you like it or not. It doesn't affect me at all. I'm not worried. So you can come up and challenge and make an argument, or you can ask questions. I don't care. But I'm in a no nonsense mood today. I'm just not taking any stupid bullshit today, because all I've heard all day long is bullshit from Mormons, from papists, and uh, dispensationalists and Zionists. So yeah, come make your argument. Bitcoin.
Hey Jay, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, you're absolutely right on all that stuff. Are you closed to just these topics you have listed on here, or are you speaking about other things?
Like what?
I kind of wanted to ask you about Nietzsche, which is way off topic.
Okay.
So, I've tried to look for videos where you talk about Nietzsche, and there just doesn't seem to be a whole lot of material. Um,
There was a members talk that I did on Nietzsche that was pretty extensive some years ago.
got you. How would you argue against Nietzsche? Do you just argue against him like you would against an atheist?
Well, I would say that his critique of Christianity applies to, Western liberalized Protestantism and maybe even elements of papism. And it's, histrionic, feminized, weak lib approach. I don't think his critiques really apply to traditional Orthodox theology and Christianity. And I would also say beyond the sort of cultural, you know, antichrist level critiques that he makes, I would just make the same kind of presuppositional arguments about any other atheistic position I make.
Yeah, I guess I've heard you and other people say that, and I feel like I've heard you say before that you like respect Nietzsche and his writing, and that just seems to be the thing that Eastern Orthodox people say is that all of his arguments are more against Protestantism, and that's just like it's anti-Protestant arguments. But I don't know, just I feel like that is kind of just like pushing him under the rug in a way and not actually answering his critiques because I don't really see how Eastern
Okay,
Orthodoxy.
well, look, you're asking me for to answer the critiques in brief, and I gave you the brief. I've read Genealogy of Morals, Ecce Homo, Antichrist, some of Thus Spake Zarathustra. I wrote an entire chapter in my book comparing Nietzsche and Dostoevsky. Um, so, I mean, I'm not a Nietzsche expert. I had a grad class on him and read a good amount of Nietzsche. So, do you want to pick a specific point to address, and I'll rebut it?
I guess yeah. I guess if you like look at the world, it seems to. be kind of a I guess like if you believe in evolution and if you look at the world, it does seem to be kind of a place where it's a bit cruel, and it seems like a will to power is kind of the reality that you do live in. And that I guess you could see people who don't like that. They can't live with that. That's what ended up creating inside their own mind the slave morality that created Christianity.
Yeah, but Christianity isn't a slave morality because traditional Christianity is monarchist and supports hierarchy. I mean, you read the book of Proverbs, it talks about honoring the king, it talks about being noble and what nobility is, it talks about a hierarchy of virtues. So the critique of a slave mentality and resentment is Nietzsche's idea that Christianity is a slave religion when that's not the entire history of the Christian church. I mean, there have been countless warrior saints, king saints. I mean, King David, the kings of Serbia, they went into battle and fought the Muslims. So it's a misconstrual of what Christianity is by picking out certain elements of it, like, oh, well, look at these monastics. You know what I mean? They just pray and fast or whatever.
Yeah, I feel like for myself, I do find it hard to find the vitality and like masculinity within Christianity, but I do hear a lot of
Yeah, well,
that doesn't
I mean, have you
apply
been
to
to an
Eastern
Orthodox church?
Orthodoxy. Have I been to
Have you been?
church?
Have you been to any Orthodox churches?
No, I have not. And
Okay, so then your experience of historic Christianity is not of Orthodox Christianity.
okay, I guess one question to that: how would I go about choosing an Eastern Orthodox church? Is it like
I would say go visit all the ones around you and check out which one is the best fit, and decide if you think it's masculine or feminine.
there? Yeah, there just seems to be a number of them around me, and I don't know if it's like Go Arch, Rokor. Those are like the two that.
I would be wary of Goark, but yeah, I would check out a Serbian church, a Rokor church, a Romanian church, see which one's the best fit. But I appreciate your questions; those are good questions, and I do have just look at my essay on Nietzsche and Dostoevsky. The other thing about Nietzsche too, I would add, is that Nietzsche really prepares the way for the end of philosophy. So people could go that route if they want to. They could say, well, fine, I'll just take Nietzscheanism, but what you're basically doing is accepting what Nietzsche prepared the way for, which is like Freud, right? So existentialism and Freudianism are the direct ideological descendants of Nietzsche, because Nietzsche basically reduces everything to instinctual drives, and that was the main influence on Freud to come up with his idea of the id and the ego and all this kind of stuff, that we're basically all just driven by our basest desires. So, and what that means is that when we talk about truth and objective truth, and when we talk about um, metaphysics. These are all just cloaks for instinctual drives and what eventually becomes psychologism. So, really, it's the end of philosophy and epistemology if you want to go that route. And the other catch 22, or I guess the problem with that, is if you want to go the route of Nietzscheanism, then it means surrendering debate. Debate's only possible with laws of logic, but in Nietzscheanism, there are no laws of logic. So you're pretty much just giving up, surrendering. Debate doesn't even matter anymore. So if a person wants to go that route, they can, but then they can no longer argue against Christianity because there's no such thing as arguing. Lean? You got to unmute.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yep.
Great. Yeah, you said that we could also ask some questions, so I was very curious because I'm a Catholic right now, um, and I'm just looking for truth, and I just found out that the Filioque is some sort of weird thing where the Son and the Father are both the origin but still one inspiration. Um, So that seems weird to me, but I'm very curious. On the papacy, I have this weird thought that if the next pope that will be chosen, if that's like a traditional pope and he sort of fixes the church, does that?
You're not going to have a traditional pope. There's no possibility of that. Vatican II is dogma. It's already solidified. So it's made up fantasy LARPing. I'm not making fun of you. I'm saying that the idea that you're going to get a traditional pope is ridiculous. I mean,
Yeah, okay.
108 of the 135 cardinals are appointed by Francis. So how are you going to get a trad pope? By the way, the most trad would be what, Cardinal Sarah. Well, Cardinal Sarah is pro Vatican II. So how are you going to get Nostra Aetate canceled?
Yeah, I hear a lot of people saying that that it isn't really dogma, but it's just
Yeah,
a
but that's just
teaching.
not. That's just simply not true. It's another trad myth because all 16 of the documents of Vatican II are signed off by full papal authority for the entire church, and there is no Catholic church in the world that tells you that you don't have to believe Vatican II or that you can pick and choose the documents. So it's just simply again another trad myth. And even if it were optional, Canon 752 of your canon law tells you that even the optional doctrines or fallible teachings, you must still accept them with docility if the Roman
Yeah,
See
yeah,
teaches
true.
them. So you don't even get to this, even if it was, you don't get the right to reject it. You have to accept Nostra Aetate.
Yeah, it's crazy because I'm going to the SSB right now, and I'm finding out things that, yeah, don't really sort of they
Yes,
don't
and
seem correct.
on the question, right, on the question of the Filioque, the problem is that the Cappadocian teaching and the teaching of Constantinople I is that the Father is the sole cause, SOLE, sole cause. If that's his hypostatic property, the thing that picks him out as the person of the Father, that is not communicable. It can't be shared. Just like the Son can't communicate or share his sonship, the Spirit can't communicate or share his spirithood. Likewise, the Father cannot share or communicate being the cause, being the source, being the fount, being
Yeah,
the arche. All those terms pick out his unique hypostatic property. And so when the Council of Lyons and the Council of Florence and the Roman Catholic Church dogmatize a dual, eternal, double hypostatic procession from a single principle, it is creating a father-son dyad and
yeah, exactly. Yeah,
subordinating the spirit to not have the power of causation and making him less.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's crazy because or I think Orthodox people believe that it's from the Father through the Son, right?
Correct. The if you read the council called Blackernay and the teaching of Gregory of Cyprus, if you get the Crisis in Byzantium book by Papadakis, it explains that for us, that's the movement of the persons. It is not the source or origin of the person. So the fact that the Holy Spirit moves through or in or rests upon the Son has nothing to do with its hypostatic origin.
Yeah, exactly. Great. I have one more question. It's
Sure.
about atheism, because I want to start debating for myself with a friend of mine. Um, but I came across some weird arguments from atheists who don't focus on like the big arguments like tag or whatever, but they focus on things like, oh, the Bible says that the Earth is flat. The Bible says that space is water, like things like that. But they just verse bomb, you know. They just spam with verses, and then it seems like for the listener that he has won purely because of like spamming with these verses. Like, how do you respond to such
Like
weird?
if you're, yeah, I mean, if you read the book of Proverbs, for example, in Proverbs 7, when it talks about wisdom has built her house on seven pillars, right? They'll use these verses, which are allegorical language about the way that the church is structured, then it has the perfection of wisdom, and they'll try to turn that into some cosmology when there's nothing about that that's necessarily a statement of scientific cosmology. It's just typological typology language in the Bible. John Damascus talks about this in on the Orthodox faith, and he says that really the scriptures aren't telling us anything about the shape or the structure of the earth. I think he even mentions Isaiah talking about the circle of the earth. So, I mean, the Bible wasn't intended to be a description of how God created the world. It's a theological text that deals with why we are here, what our meaning and our purpose is. And there's a lot of things that we're not told about, the pre-flood, um, antediluvian world and so forth. We're just not told about it. So I think it's a mistake to try to read the Bible as if it was a textbook or like a literal scientific text. There's so many passages that like talk about the four corners of the earth, right? That's not talking about flat earth. That's talking about the four cardinal directions. And so when you read the book of Revelation, it talks about the angels, and the four cardinal directions. That's north, south, east, west. It's not talking about um, a flat earth per se. Just like when Peter sees the sheet with the animals that he eats, right? It's a four-cornered sheet that signifies all four cardinal directions. So the entire world, the Gentile world, is now considered clean. They're not unclean because they're Gentiles, and thus the foods are no longer relevant to us. Gnome King, are you there?
Yeah, I'm there. Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah,
Yeah,
go ahead.
I just want to say I go to a Goart church, and me and the parishioners don't have any of the same weird, like we don't have a lot of the weird ideas that other people may have. So it's a case by case basis. So some of
Yeah, I agree.
so other churches may not be as well, but mine, I have a great priest, and a lot of the parishioners aren't with this Zionism stuff. So I just want to say that.
Yeah, appreciate that. And a lot of good people that go to Goards churches, like Chase goes to Goard. Elixia?
Hello.
Yes.
Hi there. I was just calling in because I heard you say that there was some trepidation about Go Arch, and I was just baptized in a Greek Orthodox, and I was just, I guess, curious about what your critique was.
Well, a lot of the Goards churches are, directly related to and connected to Archbishop Elpidophoros. Many of them push the EP stance in the Ukraine. Many of them push, ecumenism. So again, it's a case by case basis.
Okay, I was just curious, but that doesn't put you out of the Eastern Orthodox sphere. You're just saying that that particular church promotes some of the liberal
That
ideologies.
jurisdiction has a tendency to certain things, but no, the Russian Orthodox churches and the other patriarchates still accept the sacraments of the EP and the Greek churches, the Goar churches.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, no problem. Now, if there was a excommunication then of the EP at some point, then we would no longer accept those those sacraments. So it's open forum. I was hoping we would get some opposition, but they never seem to show up. So they love to argue in the comments, but they will never come and actually debate, including the Roman Catholics who have also kind of been making a stink today. But no. And the other thing too I noticed is like in the case of Elijah Yassi, like he just wants a giant public forum debate. Which I don't owe him that. I'm not interested in giving him that. He has like 2,000 followers. I've given him the X Space link probably 10 times over the last few years, and he never comes. He never wants to come because he says he deserves a full-on formal debate. No, you don't deserve anything. I don't owe you any kind of formal debate. And it has always been the policy since 2017. If you are a smaller account, you're welcome to come hop on an open space and debate. I don't owe you a formal debate on a giant channel because we all know that that's to get you attention and to grow your audience. I'm not even faulting people for necessarily doing that. I do that. I want to debate the big name people to grow my audience, sure, but they also don't owe me that. Jack Posobiec, Matt Fratt, none of those people owe me a debate. So in like turn, I don't owe Elijah Yassi or any of these goobers a giant formal debate. And it's a recurring pattern with so many Roman Catholics that even when you schedule a formal debate, they cause a huge stir, stink, and ruckus and use that as an excuse to not do the debate. So I don't understand. I do actually understand, but it at least it doesn't make sense or common sense why it's so hard to get a Roman Catholic or any of these other goobers to come debate when Muslims, atheists, libertarians, it's pretty easy to get those guys to come to debate. In fact, half of the Muslims I debated were people I had blocked. So having someone blocked has nothing to do with whether or not you can do a debate. It was obviously an excuse for Ridvan to run from actually doing the debate. Um, why did you block him? Because I'm tired of him spamming every time I post something about the CIA, Western intelligence, British Empire, the nation state of Israel. He has to chime in, spamming it with the normie tier takes that he has, spamming it with boomer neocon crap, which I'm sick of it. And I just, after giving him multiple rebuttals and sources, and he doesn't care, then I'm done. I don't owe him interactions. I don't owe any of you interactions. You don't have a right to interact with me. It's freedom of association means I also choose who I get to associate with, who gets to associate with me, and who I want to give time to. Also, as a debate opponent, I don't owe him access to my wall and all of my potential future arguments that he can see and easily get a hold of. And if I want to hold a private talk with people who are my inner audience, core audience, and talk to them about all the sources that I had for the CIA supporting Islam debate, I don't owe that to him. I don't owe any of this information to anyone. None of you. You're not like, you don't get a claim and a title, especially when half of these people just talk shit all day long, like Elijah Yassi. And then they're like, why is he so mean? I only call him a giant pussy and a loser and a coward for the last 10 years. But why is he so mean? Jeremiah, unmute.
Hey, Jay, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Hey, so I was, I guess, I mean, I don't know what you'd want to call it. One of the Hebrew bro guys for the last 5 years or so. And about 2 years ago, a friend of mine sent
You,
me,
you were a white Hebrew Israelite?
yeah, I guess if you want to call it that. So one of my buddies sent me a Trinity teaching you did a number of years ago, and I've been listening to it for a few years and talking to him more about Orthodox. At first, I wasn't open to it at all, but I wanted to keep listening in case I was wrong. So now I'm at the point where I'm willing to, not even willing, I want to go explore the Orthodox Church. Spoken with my wife about it. We're going to start going to a local church here. In the
Cool.
meantime, I was wondering, do you just have any recordings of you speaking to some of the more educated, if you will, you may not agree, but people who are of more of the Hebrew perspective that aren't total
Yeah,
idiots?
I
Because
did.
I've
I did.
gone,
I did. I've done two pretty lengthy, maybe 30, 40, 1 hour minute discussions with Messianic Jew type people. You can go find those two clips, and then I have another separate talk called "The Trinity in the Torah," and then I would recommend Christian Worship in the Old Testament, which is a documentary that we put together. It's at the Orthodox Shahada channel, and it's like a 1 hour documentary that Lewis did. That will also be very, very relevant to your queries. In fact, I'll put that underneath this chat right now.
oh, cool. Yeah, that'd be great. And then have you ever debated Sean Griffin or any of those guys, or have you guys ever talked about debating?
I don't know who that is.
He's got a channel called Kingdom in Context. It's pretty big. He's, you know, whatever, I don't know what you want to call it. Torah observant Christian might be how he describes himself. But no, you don't know him.
I mean, this sounds kind of familiar. He might have been somebody who called in, but I don't know.
I know him and Jim Bob have gone at it a couple times. I don't think Jim
Well,
Bob
I mean,
likes him at all.
yeah. I mean, if he would like, he is he an anti-Trinitarian?
He is, yeah.
Yeah, I think he has called in.
Okay, I was just curious if you guys had a recording of you two. talking ever.
I just don't remember. But if you want to bring any of his arguments, if you want to tell him to come hop in a space, he's welcome to. But yeah, but underneath, I did. Let me see if I can send it to you. I'll just DM you this as well. And then I know if you type in J. Dyer Messianic or Messianic Jew, you'll get a couple of those clips that would also be relevant. And then go watch my video, Trinity in the Torah. Jordan, what's up? Are you there? Well, there we go. So he waits to speak and then leaves. So I don't get, like, what's the point of waiting in here and then as soon as you're on, you just leave? I don't get it. Like, maybe they sense that their crap isn't going to work. Stella, unmute.
Oh, hi, Jay. Thank you for letting me ask you a question. I was debating I am, I guess, an evangelical. I was debating some Roman Catholics the other night, and they brought up this term that I've never heard before, um, where they said that um, we were talking about uh, when the scripture in John where a man divorces his wife and then that makes her an adulteress. And they were using the term continuous sin, so that if you um, were, back then women didn't work or anything outside of the home, so they would have had to get remarried, which would make them an adulteress. And they said, that they would be in continuous sin forever. Can you explain to me? I've never heard that. Is that Orthodox and Roman Catholic, or is that just made up? She said a priest told her that.
A Roman Catholic priest?
Yes.
Yeah, this sounds like the Roman Catholic position, which is extremely legalistic, and in fact is not even what the Roman Church. It wasn't even their attitude in the first 7 centuries. Around that time in the 7th century, when they sort of shifted on this, and so, for example, the canons of Saint Basil always recognized that there is a possibility of remarriage because it's better for a person to remarry than to be in a situation where they're condemned to be single their entire life and then just sort of live in fornication. So the Roman Catholic position is, I think, just kind of stupid on this. It's always been dumb, but they use it as this sort of like super morally, superior high ground, which I think makes no sense. It doesn't mean that as Orthodox we quote promote divorce. That's the lie that they always say about us. But we don't have this legalistic attitude that they have, and their own position is hypocritical because they dole out annulments left and right, but they have this casuistry and legality about, well, but it wasn't technically a marriage. I mean, it's just silly, like the way that they act about it. But um, I appreciate your question. It's open forum if you have a disagreement on Christian dispensationalism, Christian Zionism, the papacy, Judaism, libertarianism, feminism, millennialism, any of that premillennial crap. You're welcome to call in and I will address your questions, or you can make an argument if you'd like to come on and debate. Again, you don't. You're not owed a debate. It's me giving you my time and access to a wealth of knowledge. I'm not bragging, but I do have a wealth of knowledge on these topics. So if you want to make an argument, you can do that. Chris, what's up? I can hear you.
Can you hear me? Okay. Hey Jay, how you going?
Yes, sir. Doing good, man. How are you?
Going pretty all right. So I have two questions. One is in reference to the T-jump debate slash the like liberal versus Christian nationalism debate thing, where and this is
I didn't see it as much a couple of years ago, but kind of recently I've seen it pop up
Are
more.
you talking about my T-dump debate or something else?
Yeah, your T-Dump bait, where he basically, when you ask
Okay.
him the justification for things like immaterial concepts, the self, time over, or time over matter, that type of thing, it
Mm-hmm.
basically turned into this like circular self-referencing thing of reality is reality.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm trying to kind of strengthen my arguments against it, but I think I have a pretty solid one. I was wondering if you could just tell me how decent it is, which is that
Okay.
the idea that you can use a law of logic to justify reality's existence when for the laws of logic to even be valid in the first place presupposes reality's existence. It becomes sort of this big circle in the same way that with your Matt Dillahunty debate, where he asks you to prove an immaterial eternal God with material things like math. So math now becomes more powerful than God. It just makes no sense to me.
I mean, I think those are valid questions to ask, but I think that the question of justification is even more precise and more devastating, because to say something like reality is completely missing what the question of justification is asking. It's asking for the reasons for and how do we know that we have knowledge at all. So if we're looking for epistemic justification, justified true belief in the classical sense, just to say something like reality is so far from addressing the issue that it's laughable. First of all, what does that mean to just basically restate a form of the law of identity, right? It's also a metaphysical claim. Well, what is reality, right? I mean, reality, quote unquote, is one of the most, vague, um, elastic words, just like being or just like, knowledge. Like those are really wide ranging, elastic terms in the history of philosophy. So to try to ground your knowledge or your epistemology on something that is so vague, just like a word, well, just reality, man. It's just so fundamentally stupid and so far from addressing what the actual issue of justification is that it's almost like not even worth responding to.
Yeah. And so I had a
I mean,
second question.
imagine if I said God is God.
Yeah, I would. Well,
I
they'd
mean, it
call
would
you.
just be laughable, right?
Yeah, they'd immediately call you out for it. You know.
Yeah. Right.
And
So the
so
question is, again, I mean, there's a lot of ways you could approach this. So if somebody says, well, reality is just reality. Okay, but that doesn't address the myth of the given. That doesn't address the external world. That doesn't address truth value of propositions. Like all of these things go into being able to say something like reality is reality, or I think therefore I am. Right. So they're missing what's being asked in the question of justification, which is how do we have knowledge? What is knowledge? Is it possible? How do we give an account for that knowledge? And some sense of a worldview that makes knowledge possible.
yeah, yeah, that makes sense. And then I had a second question because I just got done watching your video on, I think it was called the top 10 worst arguments against tag, and got
Yeah.
the part where you get into the more specifics of why it specifically has to be a triune God. Um, and I guess I might potentially be a slow boy, but just from my understanding, and this kind of also, I think this ties in with the essence and energies distinction as well, where like, for example, like, because one of the weird things I hear from like people criticizing the Bible is like when they say generated, the Son is generated from the Father, they think that that is like an event that takes place in time. It's like, no, eternally generated from the Father, meaning that the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit all existed at the same time. Well, you can't even say at the same time because it's before time. If and I guess that's
Sure. Right.
a
Yeah.
bad
So
way
it's
of
an
putting
it's an
it, but
eternal, personal, intentional, communal reality. So that means that fundamental reality is personal and it is communal. And that gives us a basis for not just knowledge but also relationality in the world and meaning in the world, because the world has a purpose. It has telos. It has an end goal, which is God himself. So that is how it's possible to have meaningful predication and a meaningful life and meaningful knowledge and meaningful sentences. So all of those things kind of go together including the notion of God as a communal being, and not just say an eternal Unitarian being who didn't have the attribute of love or anything like that until he created a world to love, right? So it's a very different notion of a deity than something like Islamic justice or love or something like that contingent. Or, well, Allah doesn't. Does Allah have love? I don't know, but mercy, these kinds of things. Like, there's no communication of these attributes or actualizing of these attributes until there's a created world, which would mean that Allah moves from imperfection to perfection in Islamic theology itself. Well, Orthodox theology is not subject to that critique because God is eternally triune and eternally existing in communal love. The energy of love is from the Father through the Son and the Spirit from all eternity. And even though some attributes require a world like divine providence, God didn't always exercise divine providence, but he always had the power of divine providence. And this is another reason why God can't be actus purus, because there would be no unactualized powers or the difference between first and second actuality that Aristotle talks about, that Orthodox theology has. Roman Catholic theology does not have that. Zyla, what's up? Zylo, do you want to mute?
Yeah, sorry. In in regards to the big Z, in your talk with on Aldous Huxley, wasn't he also for this big Zionist and control through terror structures?
I don't know what Aldous Huxley's position on Israel and the Middle East was off the top of my head. I have no idea.
But he was for like this whole like terrorist control structure, right? Because I know you did mention that.
Was he for terrorist control structure? Well, in his Berkeley lectures, he kind of speaks that way. So maybe by implicit affirmation or tacit approval, he or just saying it was inevitable, maybe. I mean, he does say in the Berkeley lectures that the technocratic elites of the future will utilize the same fear mechanisms that like Protestant hellfire preachers use. He says that they'll use that same technique to terrorize the public. But I just don't know off the top of my head, like specifically what his take was on terrorist organizations. But I wouldn't be surprised if there's some quote out there.
Is there like also some link between these Zionists and the technocratic elites?
Um, Maybe there's overlap. Um, the technocrats tended to be socialists, and many of the early Zionists were socialists, but I don't know necessarily of a direct connection off the top of my head. That's another question I'm not sure about.
All right, yeah, I appreciate it, man. Thank you.
Sure, yeah, good questions. Psycho, go ahead. Yeah, unmute. Yeah,
Zico?
unmute. Go ahead.
Do you call Zico?
Yeah.
Okay. Uh, yeah. How you doing, gentlemen? How are you? How's everybody? Thank you for letting me come up. And I have a quandary over here: Zionism and papacy, or Judaism. Dispensational. Dispensational was the basically the belief of Christians that the um that's the second of coming of Christ because the Jews came back to the land. Is that am I off? I mean,
Well,
uh,
Christian Zionism and dispensationalism come from John Darby and C.I. Scofield, and the idea is that their view is that God has these sort of different plans for different people in history. And one of the elements of dispensationalism is that the return of Jews to the land of Israel is a fulfillment of prophecy. So they do have that view,
But the
yes.
Jews never left the land of Israel. There were always Jews in the land of Israel.
Well, they mean the nation state of Israel.
I see. So the nation state. So basically, you accept Israel as the rightful people of the Jews as the
Well,
rightful people of Israel.
I'm not a dispensationalist. I'm just stating what their view is. We just had this listed as a topic for anybody who has that view or other views to come to debate.
Okay. Okay. Thanks. That's all. I appreciate you. Thanks, sir.
Yeah, Donnie, what's up, man?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, did you want to make your argument about what you were saying about the Rothschilds?
Yeah, well, I kind of wanted to address, I just think the broader point that really is the main focus of what I even talk about on here. And I want to make it as clear, like I want to make my case as clearly as I can. And I just want to say that I'm not a dispensationalist and I'm not a Zionist. But I do believe that God does have a plan for the nation state of Israel, even in their rebellion, and that it's not about I reject the notion of a lot of dispensationalists, John Hagee, a lot of these guys that Israel is righteous, Israel is in a righteously fulfilling their covenant. I would disagree. I heard you earlier say that you believe that Jerusalem was actually the harlot, and I agree with you because harlotry is a reference to marital betrayal, right? And so there's only really one city that God would call a harlot because there's only one city that God ever made a covenant with.
Yeah, I agree.
Um, yeah. Um, just for some clarification, are you a partial preterist? We don't
Yes.
have to. Okay, got it. So here's my big point, right? So when I talk about Israel, right, a lot of people lump me in to the people who are cheering for whatever the government of Israel is doing or saying that they're righteous. I don't agree with that, right? I think that they're apostate. I think that they are the harlot. I think that they're still playing the harlot, and they will be until they repent and accept Jesus, right? But here's the thing: I believe that the scriptures say that God has a plan for that, right? And I think you would agree with that too,
I
for the
agree with that
most
too. Yeah,
part.
we
Yeah,
agree
yeah.
that Romans 11, I don't know if you believe this, but
Mhm.
I agree with the people that believe that the Romans 11 position is teaching a future conversion, but it's a conversion to the faith.
Right, to the faith, exactly. There's not some dual covenant
Right.
thing going on. So I think we would agree. But what I try to caution people about is hardening their hearts, and instead of being used by God as vessels of mercy and grace, right, and following the commands of Jesus Christ, but rather are hardening their hearts, sowing into the flesh, and joining the world's war against against Yahweh, essentially. And I've been kind of making some posts about this. I don't know if you've been seeing a lot of what's rising, I guess. I made a post about this, I think 2 days ago. Yeah, here it is. Where I talked about how I don't think white solidarity is inherently sinful, but it becomes spiritually dangerous when it leads Christians to yoke themselves to the pagan revival movement that's rising right alongside it. And to those paying attention, that's exactly what's happening, right?
Yeah, no, I made videos in 2017 and 18 that the
Mm.
rise of neo-paganism would be tied into these far-right racial movements. So I agree with that.
Wow. Oh, that's great. Yeah, I remember you. I haven't heard too much of your older stuff, but I remember one thing that I remember watching. I think you were talking to, was it Jay Widener, about the movie? I remember hearing about you guys talking about the movie
Yeah,
The Matrix.
yeah. Well, I have two. This was probably a year after we filmed that episode. Like, I have two talks on my channel about the neo-pagans. I forget what I titled it, but there's one in 2018, one in 2019, and it's basically just like 2 or 3 hour discussions on paganism, neo-paganism, the neo-pagan revival. And yes, in fact, I warned people not to go to Seville because I felt like it was going to be a Fed thing, and it's exactly what it was. So I would actually agree with you.
Okay. Yeah. And that's kind of like my whole thing, right? Like, I think that a lot of people, they get so hyper focused on an enemy, on an external enemy, that they turn biblical spiritual warfare from what it truly is, which is a fight against the flesh and against our own sinful nature, to an external dualistic war that's rooted in Gnosticism, right? Like dualism
Yeah.
played a
So yeah,
central
I
role.
agree with that. In the Orthodox world, it's called ethnophilatism, where
Mhm.
people put their ethnicity above the universality of the gospel, and so that
Right.
is actually a tendency that can happen. It's not so much that Orthodox churches have like far right racial groups, but rather the tendency of like if you can find some Greek churches, for example, where they will say things like don't convert people because that'll mess up our Greek, church, our tradition, our heritage, and that's you can just look up the condemnation of ethnophilatism
Hmm.
from I think the late 1800s. But yeah, that
Oh,
can happen
I
for
would
sure,
love
and
to
that
look into
is
that. Yeah.
basically it can become an idol, right? So
Yeah.
it's not that your heritage or your people group is bad; it's that you can't make that an idol above the gospel.
Yes, I 100% agree, and that's what I think a lot of the misconstruing is of my message. That like a lot of people, they go in my comments and they'll say that I'm like anti-white or I'm pro-Zionist, just all because I'm saying like, hey
Yeah, I
guys,
get
like,
all the same stuff. It's like if you say a position, people will just attack you as having any. Like, for example,
mhm.
um, if I disagree with Ridvan, I got all these people saying I'm a Muslim apologist and a Muslim dude. I've debated all the top Muslims. What are you talking about? Why would I be a Muslim apologist? That's crazy.
Yeah, no, it's definitely weird. I also wanted to know your take because this is something that I've also been connecting to, I guess, my theory, and I have a whole eschatological thing, and we could talk about that if you'd like. But I was talking about how a lot of Christians don't realize that the Bible describes the nations being disinherited at Babel and placed under the authority of lesser gods. Is that something that can
Yeah, I
fit
believe
within an
that.
Orthodox
No,
framework?
I believe
Okay.
that. Yeah.